Right, welcome to the National Housing Party United Kingdom meeting. Thanks for attending. I'm just going to give a quick explanation of my position on permanent settlement immigration. So, my position on permanent settlement immigration is, if I was living in 1946, I would not have, and I was the leader of this country, I would not have allowed one person to settle here permanently with a passport.
Yeah, 100%.
However, obviously, you would have had to have temporary work permits for certain peoples coming into the country, and if these temporary permits were given to some people and one of them fell in love with a native of Britain and fell in love and settled down, I would not be against that, because I believe that that situation is not the same as immigrants settling somewhere permanently with no connection to the country. So that is my position back then. Obviously, since then to now, there's been like 20 million immigrants settle here permanently, and I do not seek to reverse that. What's happened has happened, and the National Housing Party is never going to have a forced repatriation policy of legally settled migrants. So I'm going to start my little speech now. So we need to make giving out UK passports to foreigners illegal and a thing of the past. Our party are never going to have a forced repatriation policy for legally settled migrants. All our efforts need to be focused on showing the public all the examples of why we shouldn't be giving out any more passports to foreigners. NHPUK don't only recommend this for our country, but for all nations of the world. Once you have given someone a passport, that is it. They cannot be deported, no matter how bad the crime is that they could potentially commit. The whole point of a passport is that once you are given one, you officially belong to a certain area of land which can never be changed. Let's look at some examples of people not born here who were given UK passports. Afghan refugee Ahmed Hassan got 34 years for attempting to blow up the Parsons Green tube train. This attempted bombing would have killed at least 50 people. The Libyan Manchester Arena bomber Hassan Abadi was the brother of Salman Abadi, the infamous Manchester Arena bomber. These two individuals were given UK passports. They committed heinous acts, then they met in prison, and then they committed another crime. They attacked a prison guard. Jamaican Ernesto Elliott was set for deportation, but was prevented by a petition signed by Naomi Campbell, Chakrabarti, dozens of Labour MPs, including Diane Abbott, Jeremy Corbyn and Keir Starmer. He then went on to murder again. The Rochdale Three and the ringleader still haven't been deported. All were born in Pakistan and were given UK passports. This is 7 examples of why we should not be giving UK passports to foreigners anymore. What is done, but we need to get to a stage to completely outlaw it. If a foreign-born criminal commits a serious crime like rape, murder or terrorism and only has a UK passport, they cannot be deported. People with UK passports cannot be deported, and that is one of the main reasons why we should not be giving any more UK passports to foreign nationals. We have people calling for mass repatriation when at the same time we can't even persuade the British public to understand that giving out passports to foreigners is wrong. If we focus on the correct examples and stay well away from impossible policies like repatriation, I believe we can one day achieve this goal, which is a normal and sensible thing to do. Keep it simple and we will achieve victory. The only way someone should have the right to settle permanently in the UK under NHPUK ideas is if they marry a UK citizen. The foreign national would remain a foreign national and would never be given a UK passport. If they ever committed a serious crime or split up from the UK citizen, their leave to remain would be revoked. Only UK citizens with at least 50% native ancestry would have the right to marry a foreign national into the UK. This would put a stop to all the South Asian arranged marriages which bring in thousands of permanent settlement immigrants with no connection to our country whatsoever. Many will never even learn how to speak English and needs to be stopped. People say they want their country back. I say that when we finally stop issuing UK passports to foreigners would be the time when we get our country back. Yes, we will have millions of settled migrants here, but that is when our borders would be secured. This can be achieved if we focus on the correct policies. I'm going to give you a John Lawrence quote. We don't need any more Indian doctors. With 500,000 Indians already here. We can train the ones here already to be doctors. We don't need any more Chinese people with 500,000 Chinese people here already. We don't need any more Muslims here with millions of Muslims here already. Why is it UKIP, Reform UK and Heritage Party have trouble saying this? The Dover crisis has a direct link to World War II, which means the Lib-Lab-Con establishment will fail at solving the Dover crisis. They are already getting Nazi and anti-Semitic accusations against them regarding the Dover crisis. NHPUK have been consistent all the way through this crisis that UN Refugee Convention is the root cause of the problem and that illegal immigration is only a secondary issue. Our whole modern society and establishment was built on the alleged fight against anti-Semitism and fascism, which ultimately is a vicious anti-white agenda. People on the right who go around calling people anti-Semites and Nazis are also want more refugees into our country are part of the problem at Dover. We need to educate people that we can't take in any more refugees for citizenship and housing. Suella Braverman keeps saying that 45,000 illegal immigrants came in at Dover last year. What she should be saying is it was all perfectly legal because of the UN Refugee Convention. But she doesn't want the public to know this because the public will demand that we leave the UN Refugee Convention, which she is forbidden to even contemplate, but deep down she must know it is the root of the problem. Braverman and Sunak are lying to the public, calling them illegals. They are doing this to protect the UN Refugee Convention, which is part of the overall obsession with equality, which our establishment worships. They also worship the concept of not criminalising refugees, which is at the core of the UN Refugee Convention and the root of the problem at Dover. How many of these that she calls illegals has she given legal citizenship to? None of them have been arrested, so how can they be illegals? She will never be asked the tough questions from the media, like in a recent Good Morning Britain interview, when she wouldn't even mention the UN Refugee Convention because the media also want to protect the Refugee Convention. She will never say we need to stop accepting refugees because of the anti-Semitic and Nazi accusations she will receive, even though we have no housing and it is the obvious thing to do, the obvious thing to say. Where I live, there are at least 10 refugees with council flats who arrived well before the Dover crisis, and we have well over 1 million on social housing waiting lists. UKIP, Reform UK both clearly say in their manifestos they will continue to accept refugees like Afghans, Iranians, Hong Kongers, Iraqis, Eritreans and many more, even though we have 1 million waiting for council houses. UKIP Heritage and Reform UK also protect the concept of accepting refugees, which overlooks the interests of the British people. They also suffer with the obsession to make the world equal, which accepting unlimited refugees well and truly ticks that box. The elephant in the room is that the British people are being neglected by the establishment on housing because of the non-stop flow of genuine refugees, which will never end and never be mentioned by UKIP, Reform UK or GB News. We are paying £7 million a day on hotel bills for asylum seekers, but according to our Prime Minister and our Home Secretary, they're illegal immigrants. What does Sunak do? He gives France another 500 million. Sunak and Macron are both globalist puppets, so it wasn't a surprise. All of this is happening, ladies and gentlemen, because of the threat of being called anti-Semitic and a Nazi, because they will be accused of not allowing the Jews into England during World War II, if it was that time of history. It is now being mentioned more and more as the temperature is rising. The point I'm trying to get across is that the Dover crisis has a very deep history. I personally have made a decision not to talk about the ins and outs of World War II in public. We cannot have an honest debate about it and could end up in prison if we say the wrong thing about that subject. Look what just happened to Gary Lineker. He hasn't been criminalised, but he nearly lost his very well paid job just because he said the wrong thing about World War II. Dover is all about World War II. What should have happened with refugees is they should be kept in refugee camps with food and shelter. When it is safe, they should go back and never be given citizenship of the host nation. The UN Refugee Convention changed all of that and forces nations to give them citizenship. This has completely destabilised Europe. We can no longer even temporarily help refugees due to the catastrophe unfolding all across Europe. We have literally been invaded by Africa and Asia, largely because of the UN Refugee Convention. The Australian model. Many people keep saying, oh, we want the Australian model, right? Australia are still signed up to the Refugee Convention. Australia have got an orderly Refugee Convention at the moment, and the UK have got a chaotic Refugee Convention at the moment. But initially, Australia had a chaotic Refugee Convention. They had large boats turning up on their shores, and because these boats were so big, they were easier to turn around by the Coast Guards. But all they did was turn the boats around to an island called Christmas Island, I believe it was called. And they processed all these people on the boats on Christmas Island, and then if they were genuine, they would let them into Australia. Australia accepts 20,000 refugees a year for permanent settlement. We do not want this. We are full up, and at the moment, it's a chaotic refugee convention on the beaches of Dover. So even if they make it an orderly refugee convention, we're still going to be accepting 20 to 30,000 refugees a year, and they will be given housing in front of our own people as usual. We don't want this. This is why NHPUK campaigns against the Refugee Convention, and we want to leave the Human Rights Convention, Refugee Convention and the ECHR. So don't believe the rubbish when people say we want the Australian model. They are accepting 20,000 refugees a year. Refugees should be helped, but it's beyond that now. We cannot even help them. We're trillions in debt, we've got no housing, end of story.
Yeah.
No more British passports should be given out. Interesting development with Gary Lineker as the accusations of anti-Semitism spill over into the left, which has literally cancelled one of the biggest left-wing voices in the media. This is massive. Our society is being torn apart because of the UN Refugee Convention and immigration. Communism always ends up also eating away at itself, which is exactly what has happened with Gary Lineker. Permanent settlement immigration should never have been allowed in the first place, as I explained at the beginning. I believe that democracy could have been a success in Europe if permanent settlement immigration never happened. Although we need to face the facts that we do live in a multicultural society, it doesn't mean I will ever say it has been a success. I will never say that permanent settlement immigration is good for a country. But at the same time, we need to live with what has happened and make the best of it. One minor but substantial and positive thing I noticed recently was the Sunak and Macron press conference. I noticed that Sunak had the Union flag, our glorious Union flag behind him, and Macron had the French flag and the EU flag. They was adamant they must have the EU flag there. So they're still tied to this globalist, anti-white, anti-Christian globalist agenda, whereas our flag was on its own. I know we're not totally free yet, but it's a significant difference. Whereas Macron is so desperate to show he's still a globalist by putting this EU flag there. So, although the UK is around 4 years behind mainland European parties like National Rally, Sweden Democrats and the Brothers of Italy regarding a nationalist party gaining ground, I believe the UK will be one of the first Western countries to completely stop giving out passports to foreigners. This is because most European countries are still tied up with the EU, and they will take longer to even break free from that. There is one simple statement that would solve the Dover crisis with a drop of the hat. And it's not pushing back the boats, it's not blaming the French, it's not blaming lefty lawyers, it's not blaming the people traffickers, it's not blaming the RNLI, it's not blaming the border force, it's not blaming Care for Calais. One simple official statement from the government would solve this crisis. And that would be, we will completely stop giving out UK passports to refugees and immigrants.
Yeah.
A massive problem in our side of the political debate is people using fake IDs on the internet. We need people to stand up and be counted. I often ask people, would you get in the trenches for your country? And most patriots straight away, yeah, of course I would. But most people, they won't even show their real name on the internet. I mean, I understand if people have got families and if they lose their job, they've got kids, and I understand that. But for people who don't, get another job. You might get a better job. I lost my job about 7 years ago and I was devastated. I ended up getting a better job. I thought it was the end of the world and I ended up getting a better job. Anyway, I'm going to quickly go through. Is that still rolling?
Yeah.
Just going to quickly go through some National Housing Party policies. We are an anti-globalist party, we're a Christian nationalist party, and one of our policies is to nationalise the housing market because it's on the globalist market, and the working class have had to compete against multi-billionaire globalists from Russia, America, China, Saudi Arabia. So housing and rent prices are out of reach for most UK citizens. If you want to get a mortgage, you must pay a 10% deposit in order to be accepted by the bank lending you the money. For example, if the property you wanted to get a mortgage for was priced at £500,000, the deposit would be £50,000, which is out of reach for most people. This is because our housing market has been on the globalist housing market for decades. Rich billionaires from around the world, including the Middle East, China, USA, India and Russia, have and continue to buy up thousands of properties in the UK. Buying property, land and business in the UK is seen as a very good investment for these international billionaires. Foreign investors means higher prices. This has pushed UK housing prices through the roof, making them far too expensive for ordinary people, and has forced the UK public to compete on a global stage with billionaires, with only one winner. Many of the properties are never even occupied and are treated purely as investments. with the value of the property always rising. Many UK council flat tenants have also purchased their flats on the right to buy scheme and have then sold the property to these mega rich foreign investors. These foreign investors then rent the properties out to the UK public for sometimes £400 a week just for a one-bedroom flat. Foreign ownership of properties in England and Wales has trebled since 2010 from 88,000 properties to 250,000 properties in November 2021. Source: Centre for Public Data. The way forward. We are in a major housing crisis because of globalism and immigration. We need to nationalise our housing market. Now, when I say nationalise, I mean have a free market within the borders of the United Kingdom. And businesses to give ordinary UK citizens a fair chance in life. We need to set a reasonable future date for all foreign owners of property, land and businesses, including football clubs, for them to sell their assets to a UK citizen. If they fail to sell to a UK citizen by the date set, the UK government would purchase the assets back from them at the price they originally paid for it, unless that price had dropped, in which case it will be purchased at the going rate. A law will be passed making it illegal from that date for non-UK citizens to own property, land and business in the UK. Right, another one of our policies is nationalising the rail and utilities. NHPUK believe that the gas, water and electricity industries are too big for a fair, competitive free market, which in theory should keep prices down for the public. The nationalisation of these industries will stop their monopolisation by mega rich billionaire companies who do not want to keep the prices down for the public. NHPUK also campaigns to nationalise the UK rail network for the same reasons. The National Rail Network, which has only one train track for companies to compete over, is counterproductive and should be giving value to the public, which it does not. Having only one train track reduces the chance of having a level playing field for unlimited train companies to compete. The amount of money needed to even start a private train company also drives the unfair monopoly that it creates. France, the Netherlands and Germany have nationalised rail networks. Right, that's the policies. Got one more thing to say. We got an email recently from a very distressed family of 5, English family of 5, and they've been made homeless.
Whereabouts?
Somewhere in southeast England.
Yeah, on Cyclones Road, the White Bear.
Just trying to find the email.
Okay. Alright then. So we'll just about to turn.
So yeah, we got an email from someone, and they are in distress. We've got 140,000 asylum seekers waiting to be processed in hotels that we're all paying taxes for to pay for. And this email came to us. I won't read all of it because it's quite a long email and he's very distressed. This is the man of the house. Apologies to contact you directly, but I hope you can shine some light upon our current housing situation for my family. My wife and our 3 children, 10 to 17, are currently in a housing homeless situation. Wondered whether you and your party could advise. We were made illegally homeless at the start of July of 2022 due to the subletting of a property without our knowledge that this subletting was taking place. The agent came round without notice and tried entering the property whilst we were in. I answered the door only for them to force their way in to the property and told us that we had to leave there. And then I explained that my wife, who suffers with PTSD and receiving trauma therapy to help with this and extreme anxiety, and my 3 children would need at least a week to move out with our possessions. The agent agreed, though was still threatening. We at this point had little or no chance of securing a property at such short notice and had to pack what we could quickly. So we moved everything into storage and rented a holiday-let static caravan on the coast, just 30 miles away, with the aim to sort out a new house to move into. He sold all his work tools, couldn't work anymore. He's got 3 kids, his wife suffering from PTSD. They're living in a caravan while the establishment are just flooding our country with asylum seekers. It's disgusting. I'm going to go to the end of the email, what he wrote. I am self-employed, but my business has suffered massively. Plus I am a full-time carer. My wife worked for a large northeast university, but was dismissed last month for being long-term sick due to PTSD, which is another battle to fight. As my country seems to prioritise the rest of the world before my hard-working, tax-paying family that has fallen on stony times, please, if you have any advice, I would really appreciate it. I mean, we did put him in contact with someone, but we're getting emails like this from the public. This is obviously not an isolated incident. I've heard of stories of the government getting contracts and then asking landlords to take asylum seekers in, so that, and they're going to pay 3 times the price.
For 5 or 6 years.
3 times the price. They tell the tenant, look, unless you can match that price, you're going to have to go. And they kick the British tenant out, and then they put the asylum seekers in. This is a disgrace. And Sunak and Braverman, they're just lying to the public. They're not going to solve anything. This is going to carry on. And thank you very much for listening. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.